Good morning. I'm Kendra Banning. I work in the Electronic Commerce Division, and we handle specifically the modernized e-file or MEF process. That process each year requires that we review what we have done in prior years and consider the new changes that have been made for the current year, whether that was due to legislative changes or form changes, and we implement those for our software vendors to pick up. MEF is utilized for both business and individual income tax returns. And I'm sure that many of you know this, but for those that don't, MEF is actually a web-based system that is provided by the IRS in partnership with tax professionals and software vendors, and it supports both electronic filing and electronic payment processes. So as we are reviewing those schemas that we utilize, as well as our own business rules for Illinois, we always consider what happened in the prior years and what that looked like to try and improve the product each year. Our goal is always to make as few changes as possible, but when they are necessary, we always include those and hope to improve our business rules to make it easier for both the vendors to develop their product as well as the users to successfully submit returns once filing season starts. After the vendors have implemented everything as tax professionals or as taxpayers, even if you don't realize it, you are utilizing the MEF process when you hit submit within those taxpayer software products. So just to recap a little bit from last season, MEF is actually the only electronic payment option available for business income tax returns. So last year in 2023, we actually received 640,091 bit returns via MEF. Thankfully, this number continues to increase each year, and so we hope to see that trend continue. MEF is one of our sources for individual income tax returns, and it is definitely the primary electronic source. Each year, the returns that we receive through MEF for IIT represent about 99% of our overall population of electronic returns on the IIT side. And right now, we're a bit over 90% in total receiving electronic returns for IIT. So that is a great number. Last year, we actually had received 5,473,336 returns via MEF for IIT. Just to get a little bit more in depth, specifically for business income tax returns, we always shoot for the goal of opening up our filing season with the IRS, and we achieved that this year. So we opened on January 16th of 2024. Through BIT MEF, we do accept the 1120, the 1120 ST, the 1065, and 1041 returns, along with their supporting schedules. Each season, we go through a process to approve vendors. They have to transmit test returns, make sure they are meeting our standards for both the schema as well as our additional Illinois business rules. And so this year, we actually have 20 approved vendors so far. But I'm sure there are several more products than that on the shelves. Just be careful when choosing one to utilize, because not each of the vendors provides an option for filing each of these business income tax returns. So far this season, I actually have a number on our slide here that was from last week, and this gives you a pretty good idea of how much is happening right now. So last week, as of this time, we had received 178,494 returns. I just checked numbers this morning to prepare for our webinar today, and we are up to 242,989 returns for BIT MEF. So that is ahead of our numbers from last year and quite a jump in just the week since I had created this slide. As these MEF returns are submitted, they run through our business rules that we've talked about and the items that we've established to make sure that we get returns that are as clean as possible for processing. This makes it faster for us to process them. It also means that we have less outreach to do to taxpayers, so hopefully keeping everyone in the process happy. However, When there are issues, we will reject those returns and send out error messaging to let the taxpayer or tax professional know why we are rejecting it. So far this year, our overall rejection rate is about 1.61%, which is nearly 2% less than what we were at last year for rejected returns. So that's a great achievement and means that even though we're getting in more returns, we're actually able to process more of them on the first try on each submission. So that's good news. But to discuss those rejected returns a little bit more, we always like to offer some information about those to try and first help you all to get a clean return into us, but also in that we analyze them to possibly make improvements for the next year for those business rules. So the primary rejection reason so far this season is actually a duplicate return error. The assumption is perhaps that when these returns are coming in, the intent is possibly that they are meant to be amended returns. But unfortunately, we do not have an amended return process for BIT MEF. And so we reject these as duplicates because we've already received a business income tax return submission for that FEIN for that reporting period. So double check the reporting period and make sure that if you need to file an amended return, those are coming in separately and not through the MEF process. This year, our second most common rejection error is due to the Schedule B calculations that carry over onto the 1120 ST and the 1065. The calculation is a little bit different between the two, and it seems like this is maybe causing some confusion when it is being carried over to those base returns. In looking at that, we had something similar happen last year with the 2220 in terms of its use for different BIT returns. And so our consideration for this is that we're actually going to update that business rule and the error messaging associated with that for next year so that it actually splits those between the two. And we can hopefully give better information on those rejection error messages to make sure that it can be corrected easily and resubmitted for processing. As I said last year, one of the bigger rejection rates that we had was related to the 2220 and some of the changes that were made necessary to that form. So the good news for this year so far is that the rejection rate for that issue has significantly decreased, and we think that is attributable to the way that we have revised that business rule and the way that we provide that error messaging. So we'll continue to monitor this throughout the remainder of the season and in hopes that we can continue to improve our product for next year. So now a little bit about our current MEF processing for IIT returns. Again, just like BIT, we always try and open with the IRS, and we did this year on January 29th. Our MEF process for individual returns is available for both the original 1040 as well as amendeds. This is actually our second full season of accepting amended returns through MEF for the 1040. And so we've seen an increase each year on the number of vendors that support that. So that is encouraging. So far this year, we've approved 34 vendors for the original 1040, and 23 of those have been approved for the 1040X as well. So that's good news. Again, I had pulled these numbers for the slideshow last week. And so you can see at that time, we had 2,320,459 returns so far through MEF for the season. However, with the updated number this morning, we are at 2,644,328 returns. So again, it's a heavy part of the season. We're receiving a lot of those returns each day. Whoops, I'm sorry. And we like seeing those numbers increase more and more each week as well. On the BIT side, we actually received quite a few returns at the opening part of the season for the prior year, just due to the cycle of when their returns are due, as well as the different frequencies and the different fiscal years that they may be filing on. But that's different on IIT. For IIT, the numbers we've received so far this season represent mostly current 2023 returns. But we do also accept MEF returns for the prior 2 years as well. And so we would also allow 2021 and 2022 returns to be submitted through the MEF process. Again, just to provide a little bit more information about the rejection rates and what we're seeing so far. On the IIT side, our overall rejection rate is 8.6%. This is slightly higher than what we typically like to see. But I guess the good news of that is that we are able to determine where we are seeing that at, and it's not totally unexpected. So first, our most common error that we get each year is always related to shared secrets. Shared secrets are what are used as the electronic signature when taxpayers are filing through software like TurboTax or H&R Block Online. And so those are unfortunately always a piece of the puzzle when we're looking at rejection rates and consistently number one. However, for our second highest level of rejections this year, we are seeing those with the Schedule EIC. Again, we don't like having the higher rejection rate, but it's also not surprising that we're seeing this with the Schedule EIC this year, given the changes that Brett discussed earlier in the individual processing division section of the webinar. With the expansion of EITC, especially including those populations that are outside of what the federal allows for, we had to make a bunch of changes for lines and calculations on that form. And so that was a brand new piece of information that folks are utilizing this year to file. So of these rejections on Schedule EIC or because of Schedule EIC business rules, over 93% of those are as a result of those expanded lines. So we are continuing to look at that and monitoring it and trying to figure out if there are better ways to actually calculate and approach the business rule process for the MEF side. And we hope to include anything that we actually discover in that process as an improvement for next year's season. Overall, we've had a very successful start to both the MEF, or both sides of MEF processing business income tax returns as well as individual income tax returns. And we look forward to continuing to see those strong numbers for the rest of the season.